like 6 o'clock.
All right. It is 6 p.m. on the dot, Thursday, February 3rd, 2022. I will call the meeting to order for case number Zone 08-0003. My name is Carl Granrath. I'm the hearing examiner for tonight's hearing. The main purpose of tonight's hearing is for me to collect testimony and evidence on matters that are pending. I will make a recommendation to the county commissioners, and I do not make the final decision. So 2 weeks from today, or within 2 weeks from today, I will be submitting my recommendation to staff. They will forward that on to the county commissioners and schedule for deliberation or hearing in front of the county commissioners. I'm not seeing many members of the public here tonight. I don't expect many more to be on Zoom, but if anyone... Not at the moment? Okay, so I'll skip that part of the spiel. There will be an opportunity for public comment for the record. I will, at the time required for that, we'll go ahead and look on Zoom and see if there's anyone who wants to provide testimony. As far as procedure for tonight, staff will introduce the application, and then the applicant and or their representative will have an opportunity to be heard, present their application. And then after that would be the opportunity for members of the public to comment. And if so, applicant and or their representatives will have an opportunity to rebut anything brought up by the public or provide further evidence or testimony. We'll have there is a 30-minute time limit for the applicant's presentation. I'll kindly remind you when we approach 30 minutes. Otherwise, I think we should be set to go. Mr. Callahan, all right. And I believe we have Vlad Finkel presenting staff's report tonight.
Good evening. For the record, Vlad Finkel with Kootenai County Community Development. This is a request for a modification of an existing conditional zoning development agreement that was approved as part of a zone change in 2008. At that time, the applicant requested to rezone a total of 8 parcels comprising of 79.5 acres from rural, from agriculture to commercial with a conditional zoning development agreement. At the time, the overall request was limited to a total of 56 storage buildings for their boat and marina operation on Orlean Lake. Just a second. The subject property is located near the Washington and Idaho state line. It's located specifically on the northwest corner of intersection of Beck Road and Celtice Way. The existing zoning surrounding the subject property is a mixture of different classifications. You have agricultural, you have light industrial, you have mining with a conditional zoning development agreement. There is at least one storage facility directly to the east. There are mining operations directly to the north, and there are still some remaining agricultural parcels to the west of the subject property. The comp plan designation is border as well as transitional. As you can see, the parcels that are in close proximity to the city limits of Post Falls and State Line, south of Southeast Way, are border and transitional further north. Typically, border designation of the comp plan is set aside for minimal development that would be easily annexed into the city limits for future development at urban um, standards. However, staff believes that the comp plan designation with this specific request to modify the conditional zoning development agreement to increase from the previously approved number 56 storage buildings to 92 is really it's a non-issue. I would say it's a moot point. I believe that assessment had been done with the original rezone, and we are here to strictly look at the specifics and sideboards of the zoning development agreement and the ability for the applicant to intensify the existing use that was previously approved. The subject property is located within the shared tier of City of Post Falls, City of Rathrum, and City of Hayden area of city impact. It could be misconstrued as to why it's next to the City of Post Falls, but it's still shared tier. You would expect to have exclusive tier next to the city. However, I don't know what the map looked like in 2008, but it appears that because of the growth in the recent years or over the past decade or so, that the city has been slowly annexing land all around its existing city limits, and it has reached sort of the area where Saltese is a break line between the city and the county unincorporated area. This is the proposed layout of the development. It will consist of a total of 92 building units. Based on discussion with the applicant, they believe that at least or between 40 and 45 boats, depending on the size, will be stored in each one of the buildings. And this will primarily be an unmanned facility. The daily operations will not change from what's currently approved to what's requested. They're just requesting more buildings. There's not going to be an office or any restroom facilities or any other customer accommodations, with the exception of just solely boat storage. This is an increase of 64% of what was previously approved. These are the photos of the subject development. The site is fairly level. There is an existing perimeter fence around all of the buildings, and it will be modified according to the placement of the new buildings on site. There's an existing access approach and driveway leading to the storage facility, and there appears to be very minimal to any development adjacent to this property. Staff did solicit comments from agencies with jurisdiction, and we got from a majority of agencies a standard response of minor recommendations to no objection. The City of Post Falls did state that they would rather see this property be annexed and developed at city standards, but they're neutral as long as it remains in the county. One of the more challenging aspects of this review that staff ran into was the fact that we initially requested that the applicant submit a trip generation analysis to assess the impacts associated with the proposed impact, specifically as it relates to AM, PM, peak trips, as well as average daily trips. Based on review of the trip generation analysis, the Highway District determined that a more thorough traffic impact study would be necessary to assess the needed improvements to the existing back road right-of-way. Specifically, turn lanes, acceleration and deceleration lanes. The applicant did prepare a traffic impact study to address the concerns or questions raised by the Highway District. Based on that review, the Highway District requested that the applicant, at a future date, enter into a road development agreement to reanalyze the existing traffic impact study for the future improvements to Back Road. And the trigger point for that would be with the 60th building on the property going in place. However, the applicant, based on their analysis, believed that the improvements would be necessary at 67th building on site. And staff believes that it would make no logical sense to require a road development agreement with improvements to be done at 60th building, and with the 67th building, according to the applicant, have to go through a special notice review requirement under section 82607 of our code, where it states that any commercial site that abuts a public road, or where access is provided via a public road, must go through a special notice permit. We felt that it would be prudent that both the special notice permit and the reassessment of the traffic impact study be done simultaneously at 60th building, which is more restrictive than the 67 buildings as proposed by the applicant's engineer. We had the discussion with the applicant, and they agreed to modify their zoning development agreement that would trigger special notice permit and reassessment of the traffic impact study at 60th building moving forward. And that has been included as one of the provisions of the modified zoning development agreement. Should this application be approved, staff will place a tag to the property which will require a special notice permit with the reassessment of the traffic impact study and improvements to Back Road with the 60th building application on the property. Staff's recommendation is that the application be limited to the proposed intensity in the modified CZA, that the special notice permit and the road development agreement be processed with a 60-story building on site. And moreover, based on review of the code gives the hearing body, the discretion of requiring a public hearing before the Board of County Commissioners or dismissing with the board hearing and simply moving forward with deliberations based on your recommendation tonight. Staff believes that because there is a 64% increase in the overall number of buildings on site, regardless of the amount of public involvement and lack of opposition, we believe that you should recommend a public hearing in front of the board just to address the provisions of the code under section 8.4.909. However, if you feel compelled that it's not necessary due to lack of opposition, staff would be respectful of that decision as well. We received one comment in support, and I stand for any questions at this time.
Thanks for your excuse me. Thanks for that thorough explanation, especially with regards to the 60 versus 67 buildings. I guess just real quick, if there's anything else you can expound on as far as substantial, if there is any criteria you or staff use to determine that threshold.
I think typically a threshold or substantial change to any project, whether it's a zoning development agreement modification or conditional use permit, is first of all compatibility analysis of the proposed changes, as well as traffic impacts from what's currently there to what it will end up being at full build out. I'm a little torn as a planner reviewing this case, because in my view, 64% increase is a significant change necessitating a hearing in front of the board, but with lack of opposition and very little involvement from the public, it's hard to make a determination whether it is a significant change in that regard. So I stand by my initial recommendation to hold a public hearing, but like I said, if you so desire to just make a recommendation to move forward with deliberations, I respectfully agree with that. I will respectfully agree with that determination.
Thanks, Vlad. That's all the questions I have for you now. So, thank you, and I believe we have applicant and/or their representative here to present.
Thank you, Commissioner, staff. My name is John Barlow. My residence is at 16845 South Leaning Pine Tree Point on Lake Coeur d'Alene in Harrison. My address is P.O. Box 1180 in Coeur d'Alene. I am the executive with the company that did the original permit in 2008. I'm now currently a contract employee with the company through my company, JRB Properties, LLC. When we got into the marina business in 2000 with the purchase of Blackwell Island, we inherited a great location, an industry that we felt would grow on the lake that is the reason we all live here. We were already, of course, in the resort business and the golf business. And as we got to know the marina industry, we understood all the aspects of not just owning the marina. It involves sales. Another key element is service, quality service done by quality people in quality facilities, and storage. And in 2008, when I asked for 56 buildings, we went out and found what we felt was the most desirable location in the county for that kind of use. This property, of course, backs up to the Washington state line. To the north of us was a racetrack. It made a little noise now and then. Didn't think we'd bother them. And development wasn't anywhere near, and still today is not anywhere near this site. When you look at the marina industry and everything that's needed, I'm not sure you could find a better location than this location in Kootenai County. Does this activate the screen? I just wanted to go to the next slide, please. Thank you. That's great. And that's the only one I'm going to use, but Ashley will be using more. So the first thing we did was studying the property, and you see the racetrack on the lower left, was that the Beck Road frontage property, those parcels, someday would want to be a higher and better use than boat storage. And we've preserved those for the future and continue that today, that someday they might be an auto dealership, a farm implement dealership. Not sure what the use would be, but something that would be occupied by people, would want frontage on a road like Beck that had good access and connection. And of course, eventually it would need, at that time, it would need sewer and water. But the rest of the property was ideal for our storage. Certainly in 2008, I thought 56 buildings was all we would ever need. And if you look at what, how Coeur d'Alene and Kootenai County have transitioned since 2008, there's a lot of things are different than they used to be. And there is definitely growth. And then the marine industry is a big part of the growth. And of course, that's due to the lake. So what we thought we should do, planning ahead, because I think we're only at about 44 now, 42, I'm not positive, is to plan ahead and come to you and request to take the rest of the area that's really the same type of use and access and get to the 92 for the future. When we would build that out, it seems to me it would be quite some time from now. The zoning in the area and adjacent uses are compatible, as I said, and as were explained by Vlad. The comp plan appears to be acceptable to this kind of use with border and transitional uses. What we can tell you now, different from 2008, is exactly how the operation works. The boats are essentially put in the fall and stored in the winter, and removed in the spring. Not all at once. You can't. Each of these boats has to be serviced, and the natural process of getting a boat out, serviced, and delivered to an owner graduates the scale of how quickly they could come out. And so that, of course, affects traffic. It may be that it would be that there's traffic every day of say, April and May, but that doesn't come all at once. What we've done in our planning and talking with Vlad is thinking that when we reach that 60th building, before we get there, we feel we need to do some master planning of the parcels along Beck Road so that we can have a good idea of how would they want to be developed as we follow the transition of the county and the city of Post Falls growth. That then, after we do that planning, then we can locate the access road that's now somewhat diagonal that you see through the parcel. And probably it could be right in the middle of the two parcels and make it into two. I can't say tonight, but what we can say is that we accept the highway district's requirement that we would need to have a turnout lane and an improved access point. And so that would happen. And that same access then would be, because through the planning, we need to make sure it can service those lots along Beck appropriately. The fact that there was no opposition, I think, is not surprising. There are plenty of areas that have growth issues that are taking everybody's attention, dealing with roads and housing and schools. But also it's important to know that the marine industry now is a major provider of jobs, which is a big part of our county. I was telling staff earlier when I came in 1979 and Mr. Hagan and I started the development construction business together. The mining industry was closing and the unemployment in this county was in the mid-20s. And jobs were desperately needed. And I was also chairman of Jobs Plus for 4.5 years and on that board for 20 years. And the purpose of that entity was to bring new industry into our area that was clean, that provided jobs, and would help support schools and roads and government. And then because of the kind of growth that we've been able to bring, including the marine industry and hospitality and tourism, one of my goals personally was that my kids were young. They graduated out of college around 2008 and so on, and now they can have a job in this community. So I think it's good that there was not opposition. I think people understand the industry, the tourism industry is positive for jobs at all levels, entry levels, kids. Right now we could use more. There's a lot more jobs than there are people to work, as you know. But I'm not sure it would, if we granted this 92 building level of total build out somewhere well in the future, that it would justify another public hearing at that time with the county. If you need a public hearing, it ought to be now with the county. And so that would be my thoughts and presentations, and Ashley's going to give you more specifics as to the application and details, and I'm available for answering any questions you might have either now or after her presentation.
Thank you, sir, for your testimony. I think I have one question perhaps you can answer, or Ms. Williams may be able to. I'm wondering if you've had communications or dealings with the city of Post Falls about annexation. And if so, what has taken place?
We have not. We have not planned any development for the parcels along Beck Road at this point. That would be the reason we'd go to them. We have a number of properties in the county at Silver Beach, at the golf course, over near the Blackwell Island that we're still involved in the development phase of. We have a PUD that has we could build more apartments, condos down near Silver Beach. At the north end of the golf course, we got a PUD approval about a year and a half ago for 275 new rooms. Those would get our attention for development before this parcel, but eventually it would happen. There's no reason for us to want to annex until we need sewer and water, and we're not seeing that in our horizon of at least the next 5 to 10 years, but things do change, as we all know.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right.
I'm Ashley Williams with Ultracomer Engineers, and I'll further our presentation here. And most of this is information that, excuse me, Vlad already went through, so I'll kind of go through it fairly quickly. The current conditional zoning development agreement was developed in 2008 for 56 boat storage buildings, again previously zoned agricultural, currently conditionally zoned as commercial. The transfer storage and warehouse facilities are permitted use under that commercial zone. There are 42 existing buildings with 2 more planned. They are approximately 11,550 square feet and store 40 to 45 boats depending on size. I think the big addition here is there's no employees or customers that are on site, again, not needing the water or sewer in the discussions with City of Post Falls. And we had a couple more pictures here of the site as it's being used today. So the proposal again is to allow for up to 92 buildings in the process outlined and in conformance with the Kootenai County Land Use and Development Code. As John mentioned, the need for boat storage in the county has significantly increased with more people moving here and enjoying our lakes and water bodies. Surrounding land use, agricultural and light industrial. Area of city impact, talked about shared tier. In my conversations with the City of Post Falls, my understanding was they didn't have issues with this expanding in the county because there were no employees or customers and didn't need services. So that was kind of my understanding from talking with them. Again, Vlad mentioned the border and transitional classification in the comprehensive plan and no issues there. I think the access has been the issue that we've dealt with the most with this proposal. Access from North Beck Road, of course. Consulting with Post Falls Highway District, we agreed to do the traffic impact study that they had requested. That does indicate a left turn lane will be needed at the 68th building. It does not at this point recommend an acceleration lane. But we agreed with the road development agreement need and the reanalysis of the TIS at the 60th building. And in our conversations with the highway district, it's primarily just wanting to kind of monitor growth in that area. And if those traffic patterns change significantly in the next 5 years, that we are planning appropriately for reevaluating the TIS and making sure that trigger point hasn't changed. So we agreed to that. And then after conversations with Vlad on the special notice permit, again, that being required when we exceed 50 vehicles per day, which we approximated at the 67th building, we will complete that in coordination with the road development at the 60th building. So we're in agreement on that point. One point we haven't talked a little bit about, just in case you have some questions, they will continue to use the on-site well for fire protection. We are complying with the fire district requirements. The building size indicates no need for automatic fire suppression under the current code. We understand that can change, so we may have to adapt to that. Fire flow is provided by the on-site well, and the hydrant spacing, of course, per their requirements. And any of the building structures will meet the Kootenai County code requirements at that time. And that's all I have. So, any questions for me?
That you did answer the one question I was going to have for you in the last slide is
Okay.
to do with the current water situation. So that answers that question. So I have no further questions for you. Thank you. Mr. Callahan, are there members of the public eagerly awaiting their opportunity for an input of public comment?
No, sir. No one on Zoom other than staff.
All right, and if staff has nothing else, and if applicants has nothing else, then at 6:31 p.m. I will close the public meeting for Zone 08-0003, and wish you all a good night.